Since a perfect socialism is impossible, its successive, imperfect incarnations will always and necessarily be considered rightist in comparison to their ideal future versions. Thus, the blame for their crimes and miseries will automatically be assigned to the right, to capitalism, and to the damned liberals and conservatives. From the depths of the gulag, the grave, or exile, these will always be the authors of the evil committed by communists. This is one of the most essential and constant precepts of revolutionary logic. It practically corresponds to an unlimited right to commit crimes, to steal, to kill, and to produce all sorts of horrors and miseries, guaranteed not only impunity, but also an eternally clean conscience, one that is all the quicker to point a finger at others as it carries greater objective guilt. It is impossible not to notice the complete identity between this structural thought defect and the most characteristic trait of psychopathic mentality: the absence of guilt or remorse, the perfect cynicism of those who see themselves as innocent victims, even while engaging in violence, deceit, and cruelty. Psychopaths are neither mentally ill nor incapacitated individuals. They are intelligent and cunning men without moral conscience. They are criminals by vocation. The only moral feelings they possess are the worship of their own greatness and self-pity. Two forms, active and passive, of self-love taken to their extremes. They lack moral feelings but can perceive and produce them in others, acquiring from this a dominating and manipulative superego that neutralizes the normal functions of individual conscience, replacing them with collective and uniform perceptions favorable to the objectives of psychopathic politics. Thus, it cannot be said that all communist leaders and intellectuals are psychopaths. As psychiatrist Andrew Lobachevsky observed in his study of the Polish communist elite, a small group of psychopaths is sufficient to attract a vast circle of collaborators and activists, instilling in them all the symptoms of a hysterical distortion of perception. The hysteric does not believe in what they see, but in what they say and repeat. Their direct experience of reality is replaced by a compulsive standardization that sees things from the same angles, unable even to imagine they could be viewed differently. The mere temptation to do so, even for an instant, is automatically repressed or repelled with horror. Only a small circle at the top of the communist movement consists of authentic psychopaths. The majority, from the second tier down, are hysterics. Erich von Kuhnhelt-Lederhin extensively documented the role of hysteria in leftist militancy in general, but Lobachevsky discovered that this hysteria is not self-causing. It is a product of the penetrating and almost irresistible influence that psychopaths exert over weak minds, swapping their natural perception of the world and themselves for a second reality, to use Robert Musil's term, from which they can only emerge through a frightening and humiliating intuitive leap which will cost them the loss of group solidarity, the foundation of their fragile psychological existence. Projecting one's own guilt onto others is an innate instinct in the psychopath and one of the bases of their personal power. In the hysteric, it is an acquired habit, a defensive reflex, and an instrument of integration into the protective community. For psychopaths, it is a force. For hysterics, a sign of weakness. It is no surprise that the former wield it with cunning and restraint, while the latter do so with total abandon, taking invention to the limits of the ridiculous and delusional. But Dr. Lobachevsky delves a bit deeper into the analysis of the phenomenon. When militancy, guided by psychopaths, rises to the condition of hegemonic political and cultural power, hysterical distortion becomes the dominant mode of thinking, spreading throughout society and infecting even groups and individuals who are indifferent or hostile to the revolutionary movement. Thus, the contamination of the language of rightist commentators by the hysterical magic of attempting to invert the proportions of reality through simple word inversion occurs. When they proclaim that Lula or Dilma are right-wing, José Norman Pinto and Demetrio Magnoli, individuals not suspected of conscious collaboration with the leftist establishment, only prove that they have been unconscious victims of this contamination. By definition, every transitional government toward socialism is less socialist and therefore more rightist than its anticipated successor. Just as every real socialism is less socialist and more rightist than any ideal socialism. Seeing this as proof of substantive rightism, transforming a difference of degree into an identity of essences is such a gross logical error that it only makes sense as a psychopathic lie or hysterical mimicry. The psychopath thrives on creating impressions, while the hysteric absorbs, imitates, and spreads them. Messrs. Naumann and Magnoli want to give the impression that Pietismo is bad. To achieve this, they absorb, imitate, and propagate the verbal stereotype created by communist psychopaths to automatically save the reputation of the left after each new debacle, so it can repeat the same failures over and over. They combat the leftism of today by fostering the leftism of tomorrow.